I'm gonna come back here. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for coming out. I just got signed up to MC. I had the great pleasure of talking to Brett and being in conversation for the launch of BLBNKS here. Yeah. And my beloved Tai is going to do the honors of closing this amazing exhibition. So we wanted to welcome you all here. We're grateful that you're here, grateful to support this brother, support this Black business, his vision, and just supporting creativity, entrepreneurship, and his blessing. So there you go.
Thank you, Emil Wilbekin.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. For those of you that I didn't have the pleasure of meeting or knowing personally, I'm Tai Beauchamp. I just want to welcome you and thank you all for being here and joining us this evening. I'm really, really happy to be here. This has been a moment in the making, Brett Banks, BLBNKS. I just call him B. But I'm deeply honored to be here with you. I just want to share just a little bit of context about the space that you're in. You're in a space that is literally devoted to culture and arts. And I just want to acknowledge Kamal. Where are you? There he is. Let's give it up for Kamal. Because it's an amazing thing to come into a space where it is allocated and designed literally for us to be expressed and to express ourselves and to commune, right? And so I thank you for allowing us to be in this space. And I want to really open up with that in the vein of understanding that this space is for us. And it is celebratory, it's expressive. And Brett, you wanna know what? You're that to me. You're that to me. So I don't know, should I say how you and I met before we go into the conversation, and then I'll let you chime in. This is indeed gonna be a conversation. I could interview him all day, but y'all don't want that. So Brett and I were introduced by a dear friend of mine who is also a creative and a designer, jewelry designer, Bliss Lau, who actually lives in this area. And Brett was a student of Bliss at FIT, right? Parsons. And what's interesting is that Brett and I had a lot of mutual friends. Brett and I also happened to go to the same church already, but had never really connected. Why did Bliss want us to meet? I don't remember.
She was just like, yo, y'all need to meet.
Yeah.
She asked me the same thing. She said, do you know Ty? I was like, I know of her, but I don't know her. And she connected us. Many people were like, yo, y'all need to meet, but no one actually connected us. It took Bliss to connect us, and we're here.
We're here right now. And honestly, when we met, it was like a whole vibe moment about art.
Everything,
life, creativity, design, and faith. And so I will say that this journey is really about that. So I want to talk to you because, I think a lot of people here know your background as a designer and a creative director and what have you, and all of the work that you've done more commercially. But what does creativity and to be a creative mean to you?
It has levels to it. It's to be clear. So you have to be clear as a creative because otherwise you won't have downloads. Two is to be one or have oneness with self, but also with the higher being, because that's where all creation is created. We were created through that, or God. So having that oneness with Him, and then also being able to reimagine is what creativity means to me.
How many creatives do we have? Y'all all look creative. Actually, I was like, take that back. I take that back. You all look creative. But how many would define yourself as creatives here in this space? Yeah? How many of you are of faith and have faith or believe in faith? I saw a lot of hands go up. What do you think is the intersectionality between faith and creativity? You talked about the oneness with God and the connection. What is that alignment for you as a person of faith and also being creative? And I think that that's so important, especially as we think about sometimes the secular world that we live in, when there isn't necessarily that expression and that oneness that comes together. What does that mean to you?
It means a lot. For me, to be creative is really, it's internal. And so, like I said, oneness, that oneness is being aligned with oneness, because my creativity, I can't take credit for it. So anything that I create, it comes from God. And I'm using it through that. So I'm a vessel of creativity. And so that's real. And it's like, my creativity comes in different ways. I can be in a shower, I can be in meditation, so I could be in prayer, or I can just be walking down the street and I see things. And so I'm really in tune with that oneness.
Did you feel that when you were working for some of the larger or more major corporations, or did you start to come into that more when you started to design for yourself?
For myself. I had it and it was there, but when you're by yourself, working for yourself, it's a lonely situation. So it's that connection and that creativity and that conversation is real, and it's every day. And so it's like, okay, you can be walking down the street and you have a download, or you don't have the distractions. So when you're working for a big corporation, there's a lot of distractions that kind of take you away from that. And so, yes.
And so recognizing that we're in a space filled with quite a few creatives who may not necessarily be independent or entrepreneurial just yet, what is your counsel then to really kind of tap into that outlet of the oneness, that other space, as you're working perhaps for or with?
Well, it's really interesting, because the peace and power and the self-love is something that when I got out of my corporate job and was like figuring out what was next, these things really held me down. So understanding the peace that's around you and the power that's within you, that's major. And so whether you're in a corporate situation or you work for yourself, holding on to that will take you a whole long way. And then also being love and understanding what that means, loving others and selflessly loving others. And the exchange is major, because also that's an exchange of our gifts and talents. And so understanding that none of this stuff is done by yourself. And so the more people that you have in your circle, they're able to see you and able to help you actually move your things forward is positive, and it's affirmation as to where you're going. And it's real. And so very, I say that is because you and Emil came into my life as I'm starting to build things. And so I didn't have a lot of friends who were like where I was. So a lot of people were still in the corporate sector. And so I couldn't call them and say, I'm going through this. So I was able to, God literally planted you guys in my life. And so I'm able to actually come to you and say, Ty, I'm going through this. E, I'm going through this. How can I? And so having those people around is major.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's so powerful about that, though, too, is that what art and expression and fashion, as someone who's worked in the fashion industry and now more fashion adjacent, I say I am, for 20 years or something like that, minus 19. But is that I think when you're in that space, to take something like peace and power that is such a powerful and positive affirmation and make it so grounded in the sweatshirt. So tell us about, I know that that's your aesthetic. I know that, that's how you dress, but why did you want to design it in this way? Why the inversion of the peace and the power in that way? And what does that mean to you?
Well, I designed it for myself. So it was something that I needed daily as a reminder. And so it started with me. And so, okay, what do I want to wear every day that will remind me of stay the course, don't give up, be strong, all those things, love. And so I was like one day just literally thinking about it, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna just go and create it. So I went to the local cleaners and had someone actually sew some felt letters on just to kind of see what it would look like.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started. And so I just was embodying it. I was like, I wear a uniform at this point in my life. So if I can wear a black sweatshirt or something every day, I'm cool with. We've had those expressions of cool things to wear, but it's not about the garment, it's about the message for me. And so I started there. And so I just held on to it. And so creating this, I'm living it. And so creating this is for you. So the exhibit is called For You because it's for you to embody. So I've embodied it and I'm still embodying it, even today. So I'm holding on to peace and power daily, love daily. And once we understand that, we become better people. And so these garments aren't to rock and say, I'm cool. No, I understand who I am.
What's so cool about this, and Brett is kind of leading into, the exhibition is called For You. You see that there's a duality when you use the technology and actually look at the garment, it says something else because there's a different expression. There's the detail of the self-care, the reminder of self-care inside the label so it's closest to you. But what was cool, B, is that you said that peace and power was a reminder for you, and so it was ultimately selfish. This was something that was birthed internally, but then the exhibition is for you.
Exactly.
So let's talk about, internal transformations, transitions, which I know we've been in together. Tai Beauchamp is still neck deep in it right now
And
at
Brett
this very
Banks.
moment, amen. But why our transformations and the things that we ultimately internalize are not just for us, but for others. Talk about why that's important to you and what that means to you.
It's important because it's an exchange, right? And so when we internalize something, we also have to be able to internalize it, process it, and also give that to someone else. And so it's an exchange of gifts, if you will. And so if I'm learning something, it's selfish of me to not share it with you. And so understanding embodying, we're gonna use that word embodying. So the product is for you to embody. So it's like whatever you can embody and internalize, it becomes one with you. You know what I mean? And so that, I think, is very important to be able to transition and through life, and also to be able to help others.
So I remember the first kind of prototypes that you had gotten back as you were designing, you were like, that's not it.
A lot of those. Actually, Josh is here. He shot my son and myself for a tonal thing, and he saw the first variation of the black on black, because I started with black on black. And he's at our place. He's like, nah, I can't, it's not gonna photograph well. So we ended up shooting something that was black and white. But he's been around and he's seen all that. And so for him to kind of see it full circle is very interesting for him to be here and see that.
So tell me about we're using, fashion is really a metaphor for life, right? Art is really a metaphor for life. The question always is whether or not art imitates life or life imitates art. But ultimately, the journey of establishing for you and peace and power has been a journey. So let's talk about metaphorically the fashion journey for you in this journey. Describe the process, and I want this to be, and also, and while B is sitting on that, just a disclaimer, we speak every day. We correspond every day, both via text and call, sometimes multiple times a day, depending on what's happening right now in my life. But, with words of affirmation, scriptures, conversations, all the things. And so for us to be sitting here right now, introduced in what we know is the secular, sometimes superficial fashion world, or at least perceived to be that way historically, to be on this journey to peace and power, what does that mean for you? And then, tactically to design these and be like, that's not it. Why is fashion and this process metaphorical for your journey?
It's metaphorical because it's who I am, right? From a creative perspective, but also the messaging is who I am as well. So a lot of people don't know the messaging part of Brett. And so
what do you mean by that?
Me communicating with people on a daily basis. So part of the process is back probably, I say 2 years, 3 years, almost 3 years ago, God challenged me to do something that I was very uncomfortable with. And so I have a group of people that I send out a daily devotional to every day. And so I was very uncomfortable doing it because I didn't know how people were gonna receive it. And so when I got comfortable with it, it was like, okay, I get it. And so he was teaching me about messaging and how you can utilize messaging and transform other people's lives, and you can be a vessel to do that. And so understanding that was like test one. So I'm doing that consistently every day. Then it's like, okay, now you gotta move on to the fashion part. And so it becomes this. And so how are you gonna spread this as far as letting people understand
because
that?
it's ultimately a platform.
It's all a platform.
To hit more, to connect with more people, to impact more people, to empower more people, to trigger thoughts and enlightenment.
Right, and not putting it in anyone's face is just like, it's art, right? And so art is open to your interpretation. This is open to your interpretation, but whatever speaks to you is gonna speak to you. And so for me, that is majorly powerful. And when you get feedback, and I don't do it for feedback. I just do it because that's what the instructions I'm given. I'm very clear in my life right now when I'm giving instructions.
I love that you talk about the instructions, because inside the sweatshirt, there are self-care instructions. Can you kind of recite a little bit of what
Well,
that says?
it's basically being love. You know, we're a vessel of love. We're to give and receive love. We're just love. At the end of the day, it's really just being love and understanding what that means to you, but also an exchange, because we can't do it by ourselves. And understanding that the foundation is love. Peace, power, and love is major. And so the three of them together is like next level. And so if you can actually understand that from just a mental perspective and digest that, it can take you a long way. It's just like, I love you.
I know.
And receive it.
I do receive it.
And vice versa, though.
Amen.
It's a reflection.
Yeah.
And so this is a reflection. And so you might be walking on the street, and if you're wearing it, but if you're not even wearing it, if you're being love, because that's what it's basically telling you, it'll reflect in who you are, and people will actually draw towards you. And so that's the message.
I think that that's so cool, because and I love you too.
Thank you.
I do. As I love all of you, but I have a special love for him too. I think about, so B has, I think I have a total of 3 of my own personal customized pieces of BLBNKS. And I didn't know this at the time, but B said that I was the first to commission a custom piece. And so 2 of my pieces are up here, 2 up here, and then I got another one made for a friend here, and then one that's very different actually, which I know you put a lot of love and attention into. It was collaborative as well as commissioned, where he's like, I think I found the jumpsuit, and then I was in LA, and I was I wasn't working out as much as I am right now. And so there were questions about whether or not I could fit it.
Right.
And he was like, I think you can fit it. But like, I'm gonna tell you, when I wear your pieces, and it's less about like people just acknowledging what's dope, it's more about people seeing the love in the process of the custom pieces. So these are the sweatshirts that are obviously still limited edition, but these are custom pieces that B has created. Talk about the love that goes into customizing and that process.
Well, going back to the self-care, also, the self-care instructions tell you that it was made with love. So everything that I'm making is, so when you place an order, it's being made for you at that moment. It's not like it's sitting in a warehouse or sitting somewhere, it's actually being made for you. So the fact that someone is making something for you is major. Secondly, it's personalized, so it has your name or whatever you choose to in the center placket close to your heart. So whatever you want there is close to your heart for love. So that's major as well. And then also, it's a lot of thought. So the 07 means completion, but knowing that you are complete. Complete and lacking nothing at all. So we're all lacking nothing, even though we think we are, but we're not lacking anything. We have all the ingredients we need to make things happen. We just gotta actually tap into it.
So you can clap if you want. And thank you for that and for the explanation. I think it's one thing to say something with what you wear, and it's another thing to pronounce something with what you wear. You know, I think about, you know, how we show up in the world every single day is really a pronunciation of something that we embody, something that we stand for. And for me, it's faith in God and love. And for you, I know the same thing. So I think to actually, it's almost like putting on the armor of love and God, right? Like,
yeah. So it is armor.
Yeah.
So this messaging is supposed to protect you. So the fencing, the iteration of the fencing is protection. So you kind of get that, and you'll see that in other places. So very, very specific about placement. So you make the connection, but it's armor at the end of the day. And so also it's a sort of just as things kind of drip down to you, as the heavier it gets. So as it drips down, as far as your downloads, it kind of goes, it embodies you. So it's sitting in the center for a reason, close to your heart. But it's really, really your armor. So if you can armor yourself up, even if you don't wear it, armor yourself up mentally with the messaging is when you win. No one can take it away from you. They can take the sweatshirt, but they can't take what you know. They say knowledge is power. That's real. And so when I say that also, the elevation of kids, if our children understand what these messaging mean at an early age, we won't be where we are now. And so that's key. So teach the kids. I'm glad to see children here. And when children come in and actually understand, and you ask them, what does this mean to you? And they tell you from their perspective, and it's a real thing. We gotta honor that, but honor them and understanding. They don't understand what this is, so we have to teach them. You know what I mean? So we're all hungry, but we have to be fed to embody it.
You know, so I'm thinking about the idea of peace and power and like even just how it's inverted. And most people would think that power is not peaceful, or to have peace is to not necessarily be empowered. But the linkage of understanding that our peace is our power. That is ultimately.
No one can take it away from you.
Yeah.
It's in you. So that's what I'm saying. The peace that's around you, but it's really in you, and also the power that's within you. Tap into that power. You tap into the power, no one can take that away from you.
Did you imagine that you would be here, like when you started this journey 3 years ago, and you know?
Never.
Yeah.
Not even, no, at all. It's blowing my mind, actually. It's blowing my mind that we're sitting here. Because it was just the messaging I wanted to, I'm a low behind a radar type of guy, so I can flow underneath the radar. I will put it out in the world and people that they discovered it. But when you have people in your life who push you, you gotta go further. And so as we're on a shoot, a friend of mine said, we need to do an exhibit, and we're here. So again, I didn't imagine this, but now that I'm here, I get it. And so it's bigger than me, and it blows my mind when people come. I've been doing a lot of personal tours with people, and what they download and what they share with me is heavy. So there's sometimes I'm just leaving and it's so full of joy, but also full that it's working. This is what it's about. So I'm clear that I wasn't supposed to go back to a corporate job. This is my mission. I don't know what's next, but the fact that people are actually getting it at a high level, I'm fulfilled. And that fills my heart because I know that I'm walking in the right path.
What is the journey of creating this and getting here taught you about you that you didn't know? The most kind of like standout thing that you've been like, I'm going through it, but peace and power, self-care, what's the thing that you didn't know about Brett that you know now as a result of this?
A lot of things, really.
Give me the top thing, and I mean honestly, crazy enough, I think the journey is magical because Braxton wasn't here, right? And so during this process, Braxton came to be, and that was a birth,
yeah.
And you know, but
it was really the surrender. That's what I learned, to really surrender and trust and believe. Because I was dibbling it, and then I would go do something else. I would dibble in it, I would go do something else. Then a client would come and that would take all my focus. And then at one point, everything just stopped. It was like, you gotta focus on this. And so really being unfocused to be focused. So that taught me that, as far as how to be really, really focused. And when you're really, really focused, it's gonna take you to a whole different level.
It's also antithetical to think about, you know, in lay terms anyway, the idea of surrendering, creating peace and power. Because we think about surrendering as a statement of weakness.
No.
Right? And or I mean, I'm saying like in the secular, you would think that to surrender is a weak thing. To surrender is not to have power, is to be on the opposite end of peace and power. But what you're saying ultimately, if you've learned to surrender through this process and you still and you gain peace and power in that.
And you give it. But also, what I've also learned is the fact that you have to be vulnerable. And so I've learned, that's the biggest thing that I've learned through this process, is how to be vulnerable. Transparent and being vulnerable. I'm at the most vulnerable, transparent point of my life I've ever been. I'm an only child, so I kind of can keep to myself, be in a room with a lot of people and go to the corner and be completely okay. But
I can do the same thing.
But I've learned that you have to share. Yeah. And so where I am, and that's, I guess, the platform that's being created for me, is to be able to share the things that I've learned and how it's working and what hasn't worked, so you actually can pull people along, because a lot of people are stuck.
But what does that mean as a black man to learn to be vulnerable? I think especially during this time. I was with a friend. Do you know Jason Rosario? I was with Jason last night, and we were talking about toxic masculinity. And I think as a black man to speak honestly and openly and transparently and say that it taught me vulnerability. How does what does it feel to come into that at this point in your life?
It feels good.
Yeah.
Because I think also, when you're able to be vulnerable and transparent, you're living that you're tapping into your oneness. So there's things that you're hiding. So when you don't, I might tell this person this, I might tell this person that. But when you're able to be transparent, it's like there's nothing to hide. So there's like, this is who I am, take it or leave it. And also, this is what I'm sharing, whether you like it or not. And so it's less about pleasing people. You know what I mean? So you're pleasing others in a different way, but in your transparency and your vulnerability, you win them over to be able to do the same thing for themselves. Because a lot of people don't want to share.
Yeah.
And so our gifts and talents are connected to other people's dreams, visions. And so as soon as we understand that and want to exchange, the exchange is in the win.
Oh, I love that.
And so if you can exchange these things, it's not about me.
Yeah.
This is not about me at all. This is not about you. And we have to understand that, like, we need each other really, really bad. Oof. And if we don't understand that, we get stuck. And it's like, in a culture where, okay, I got mine, I'm gonna go in a corner, but you should really got yours and help the other person get theirs.
Amen to that.
And show them how to do it.
Amen to that.
And own it.
Yeah. Amen.
So that's a real thing that I've learned, and it's like, I didn't do this myself.
Yeah.
I've seen people, their gifts, and operating it, so I'm gonna tap into that, and I see them.
Yeah. Amazing. I like that you talked about the exchange. I think that's an opportune time. I don't know if I told Brett this, that I was gonna do this, but I would love to take a couple questions, because I also think that this powerful space of community, what you experience is obviously your experience in this art, in this space. So to further exchange, does anyone have any questions for Brett? Okay, yes.
I actually don't have a question, I have a statement. I am so proud of you.
Yeah.
I've known Brett longer than anybody in my life. And I'm so proud of you for just stepping out and doing what you need to do. You know, I've been doing art for 30 years, and I've been desiring that exchange that you're talking about. Like, what you're saying is how I feel. I don't know if it's a Pittsburgh connection or what, but I feel you, I love you.
Love
and
you too.
You.
No.
Thank you.
And to add to what Rashida is saying is the fact that, I grew up in Pittsburgh in a neighborhood that I had friends pass away early. So like, people dying when you're in middle school was like, you became numb to it. When you got to high school, and so I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, it was like, we weren't supposed to be here.
Right.
I wasn't supposed to make it out of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And so you have friends who died early in life, didn't even experience it, and it's like, wow, like, so why not, when you have an opportunity to execute something that you have, a dream, a vision, go for it. You only get one time around. And so, stop the excuses. Execute, and what's gonna happen is when you find yourself walking along the path, your path is gonna find you and lead you. And the fear is kind of get you distracted, you know what I mean? The exchange is you really just understanding what that is. Keep moving, keep going, keep going, keep going. You'll get there.
B, I feel like you're speaking to a few people in here.
I'm speaking to
tonight.
myself.
And no, but I'm saying like with real, and that's the other thing. I mean, you said it early, like, this is our truth, right?
Yeah.
But people need to hear it.
But also,
people need, and so we can't discount that. I mean, that's the power of sharing our own testimonies. And I was saying to a friend of mine who's here from someone I went to college with and graduated college, I was like, listen, when I share this testimony of the last 4 years,
yeah, it's real.
y'all gonna be like, but Instagram didn't show that.
Right.
Word.
Right.
Word. Because,
Yeah.
and so I think that
and getting caught up in that too. It's like, sometimes, and we talk about this a lot, is you gotta disconnect. Because what's happening is you gotta disconnect from people, from things, because it's a distraction. And so every time you're trying to go that way, you get distracted, right? And so then you're off your track. Then you gotta go back. And so you have to be very clear of who's around you and who's supporting you, who sees you, and who believes in you. Everyone doesn't believe in you, and that's okay. Don't rock with them, it's hard, but your crew and your tribe need to be tight towards you and support you. That's what it's about, accountability. But the word is we need each other.
Amen to that. In the spirit of exchange, anyone else have a question or a thought? Anything, it could be tactical about the exhibit. Thank you, what's your name? Laura Aisha.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight. And
Thank you for coming.
Magical flow.
Amen.
And so, I've been in a process of retraining
Yeah.
for 25 years, and when I saw the work upside down, so you can, reflect and use it throughout your day, because it's a mantra for me, but so often I default to not love. So like remembering love, and I try to replace fuck with love. Like fuck, and then I'm like, fuck. So it's, just
It's changing, your mindset.
retraining.
Yeah, you have to do that.
You too, you offer them.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna buy a little hoodie for my friend for you.
Oh, wow,
Thank you, Laura Aisha.
But also the thing also I want to mention, the inversion of sorts. Anything that's inversion triggers your creativity. So whether you realize it or not, if you see something that's upside down, it's triggering your creativity. So that's also a gift. So your hair, hopefully your creativity is going to a whole different level by being here. And I'll share this story. I shared it before, but it's important. I practice yoga, and an inversion was something that I really wanted to master, if you will. And so being inverted is not easy. And so once I guess got the hang of it and actually started doing it regularly, my creativity went to a whole different level. And so I was and then I learned that anything that's inverted triggers your creativity. And so I was like, wow. So where I'm in my life, I feel like I'm the most creative that I've ever been. And not in the sense of I'm making some really crazy dope stuff that's out of this world, but creative meaning I see clearly. I can reimagine things. I can also see something that's not for me coming down the street. That's the creativity, being able to having your sensors, being in tune to what's around you and who's around you and what they're speaking. Because you have to have those sensors up. That's creativity.
You know what's interesting about that, and we've been talking about me potentially disconnecting for real for 6 months.
No, I'm serious about that.
And so Via's I think you need to do it. Inversion is also doing the opposite of what you typically do. So it doesn't just have to be a visual thing, but flipping the thing that you typically do on its head and doing the opposite.
Right.
And I'm thinking now
Flipping the script.
about what you just said, Laura, and Emil and I had this conversation. Where are you at, baby? Okay, sweetheart. We had this conversation last night, and we've been saying that he's rereading the 4 agreements, and he's saying to himself, he's like, that's not a part of the agreement. So I think in those things, but the level of consciousness you have when you're thinking about doing the opposite. So there are some things in your lives right now that you're doing that are not serving you and not serving the people that you love, that you need to consider doing the opposite. So that inversion message is really, really powerful. Anyone else have a question, babe?
Oh, good question. So, since you asked me a question, there's a backpack on that sofa. Could you just grab one of those? Actually, there should be a sweatshirt over there.
Thank you, E, for your help.
It's already on the couch. While he's getting that, I want to just share this with you because it's so important. It says in this garment, but it's also in our lives, there are imperfections in the stitching, making the garment one of a kind. We're one of a kind. Being a reminder to embrace your imperfections. Imperfections reflect your power. And so you're a garment too. you're talking about the inversions and all that, you're a garment. Whether you wear it or not, you're a garment. So the power's within you. Embrace your imperfections. It's cool. You don't gotta, it's cool. We all have imperfections, and that's why this was built. Literally, it took me 3 years to do this. A lot of thought went into this. And it's not for me. And I just want people to embody. It's for you. And that's what it, and the funny thing about all this is, inside the tag, can I see it?
Thank you.
Inside the tag, and it just hit me.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So when I actually, this is one of the first things I actually made was the tag. And inside the tag it says—
The Karen section.
Yeah, it says for you.
Yeah.
And so when I was trying to think about what the exhibit was going to be called, not even thinking about this, For You came, because this is really for you.
The attention to detail is amazing, and you should know that these are all numbered, right? So
It's art.
This is art in limited edition. So when you get your BL Banks, you get something very, very special.
And so this is reversible. So it's a reversible garment as well. And so the nameplate is on your chest. So whatever it doesn't have to be your name. It could be someone that you love, or it could be a word. It could be whatever you want, but something that could be close to your heart. That's the significance behind it, and really being able to also honor that. And it could be something that you want no one to know about. So maybe you don't wear it inside out, but
Just
it's
for
something
you.
just for you.
Yeah, just for you.
That was your question, right, email?
That's perfect. Thank you, E. Thank you. What's that, Rich from the Bronx?
So, right, you had a statement where you just said, like, you have a lot of people that have passed away in your life, and that you're not supposed to be here. So, have you ever fought against imposter syndrome, and if so, how did you come back?
Say it again.
Have you ever fought against imposter syndrome, and if so, how did you come back?
So I'll just repeat the question so we have it on camera. So have you ever fought against imposter syndrome, and how did you come back?
I think we all do at certain points of our lives. I mean, it's just what it is. And but I think how you combat that is with understanding your own identity and really, really tapping into that. It's like, I'm rich, I'm dope. Almost like with my son every morning, I try to do it every morning. I tell him, I am loved, I am great, all these things, and you just kind of, and so you can speak to yourself. And so that's how you combat that. But also you combat it with just understanding that you are great and telling everybody, I'm great. And it's not being boisterous or, selfish or just, egotistic. It's like reminding yourself, I am great. And that person should mirror and say, you are great. You know what I mean?
I love the idea of passing on like the greatness.
Yeah.
Like acknowledging that. I'm gonna take this last question and.
Yeah, Jay. So, my question is, you mentioned the spiritual aspect to your life.
Yeah.
Right? And how that informs creatively. But as a creative, like, we all get ideas. We're like, jot it down, put it down. Right? Now, at some point, this was also an idea amongst those other ideas that came to you through what we all get it from. It's something that whispers to us,
Right.
Something that lands on your shoulder. But how did this idea connect? How did it call you? How did the idea choose you to go forward this way and not with those other great ideas?
So what Jay is ultimately asking is that we all have a ton of ideas. How do you choose? How does this idea choose you, and how did you choose this idea to move forward with?
It was my armor. So out of the breaks of living my corporate job, I started like sitting on it. And at that moment, I didn't know it was gonna be this. It was just for me. And then it was like, no, wait a minute. Oh, there's more to this. And then you started creating, okay, I wanna wear this.
I want other people to wear this.
I
wanted to wear it.
Right, how do I do this? Oh, wow. And then you're doing other things, passing on messages to other people.
Yeah.
You're like, this is it. And so for me, there's stops along the road. So it was like, okay, test one was for me sending out devotions to my friends every day. That was test one, like, oh, got it. Test 2 was starting to actually do it myself and understanding that there was a need for it. And then so everything kept on continuously aligning up. And all the other stuff, really, I was doing other things for other people. So it was, for me, fortunately, it was those creativities were being filled through other vessels. And so I was able to either share those things. And while I'm speaking about that, too, is what I've learned is any idea that you have, more will come. So if you have someone that needs an idea, share your idea. Don't be selfish about that idea because it's going to come back to you. And as more you build them, because we all have a lot of great ideas and like, oh, I'm going to just keep that for myself. No, share it. If someone has a need for it, share it because everything else is going to come again, more so than that one. But for me, Jay, it was really like everything kind of stopped. Like things like creatively, people were like, I'm full, I don't have a budget right now. It was like, God was like, you need to sit still and finish this. And like, I got you.
Surrender.
That was it.
It's a surrender.
And so when I heard that and then started working towards it, walking towards it, I was like, what I've been waiting for. But I'm okay with the waiting because also during the process, I was learning iterations. So there was probably 10, 15 iterations, but also during the process, more things came to be added to it. And so by the end of September, October, I was like, we're there. After 3 years of, no, that's not it. It wasn't really just trying to be a perfectionist, but seeing things, reading more things, adding this, adding that, was like, wow. And also the process, you're doing it yourself. So I'm the CEO, I'm all these other things too. So you wear all these other hats.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yo, you gotta choose one thing and be focused on that one thing.
Let's give it up for BLBNKS. I'm sure that all of you are following BLBNKS on Instagram. If you haven't gone through the exhibit, please do. I want to thank you for sharing. I want to thank you for sharing for us, for you with us. And I thank you all for being here. And I think we have a little bit more time to kind of chill out in the space.
One thing I want to do say is I'm going to take an opportunity and just thank Kamal.
Yeah.
And let him say something about what Black Gotham is about too. But he opened up this space.
Thank you, Kamal.
He's opened a space to me, and I'm grateful for it. You know, it's like and literally the vision that I had was a space.
Thank you.
And he opened the doors for me, and not too many times people do that generously. And so I'm ever grateful for the fact that someone that I knew growing up, but also opened up a space 2017. We sat down in 2019, we're doing something. And so supporting one another is a major thing. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I want them just to kind of talk about, you know, the space that you're in, what they do at Black Gotham, and also the media and all those other things that they're doing great here.
Word, awesome. How we feeling? Word. That was solid. I'll be brief, and history is important, knowledge is important, and one thing that I've discovered in studying the history of Black people in New York is that we have gained so much, and then it goes away, but then we regain it, then it goes away, then we regain it, then it goes away. And I think it's important for us to understand that before there was in New York City, there was Black communities on this island. In the 1600s, you know, people that were, you know, filing petitions to get married, to have land, before there ever was a British occupation of the territory. And so don't ever think that the Black experience started in 1920. Black folks are here paving streets, paving roads, and one of the most important things that we've had every time we've built up is guess what? Each other.
Community.
Community, you know what I mean? And one of the most important things for us to get back, the most important part of our repair is being able to like have each other and support each other. And when I saw that, you know, Brett already was a dope friend of mine, but that what he wanted to do was build in community, it was like an honor to be able to like have that take place at Black Gotham Experience. So I got a lot of love for Brett, appreciate what he's doing, and I appreciate y'all as well. So that's my brevity. So
thank you.
And also the pieces of art on the wall is Kamal's as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like serendipity because I think when Brett was like, yo, whose pictures are these on the wall? I was like, those are mine. He goes, dude, this is crazy. Wait till you see my work. And like the whole black on black aesthetic, it was just like text based. For me, I like the black on black with different types of mediums of black because you walk by it, you can't quite see it. You gotta stop and look at it. Like you do on one of our walking tours, you walk by something, you might not quite get it. And so it's kinesthetic, but it's simple. I think black's a dope color. And so it just kind of like played off each other in a really dope way. And honestly, I've been like happy to like just almost like play it back a bit like Brett often does. And it's like really like celebrate Brett's genius and what he does. And I'm glad that they synced up so well. So stay in tune. I'm gonna talk about the whole Black Dolphin family. Lots of folks in the building who are members or part of the team. So yeah, stay connected. Rap Black Dolphin on Instagram or blackdolphin.com. I gave a tour today. We give walks on a regular basis. So stay plugged in.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
This was good.
Thank you.
Thank you, love.
Thank you, love.